Hey, everybody. Really fascinating chat today as we dive into how to help startups navigate risk with a company with expertise in this area at Foundershield. Jonathan, how are you?
I'm doing well, Evan. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for joining. Really interesting topic. Maybe give us a quick overview of Foundershield, the mission, and yourself and your journey at the moment.
Happy to. And I've been with Foundershield almost a decade, so I'll try to keep it relatively brief. We're a tech-enabled insurance brokerage. That means we're the middleman between business owners and insurance companies. We help facilitate the strategy and placement of the insurance programs for startup businesses. Uh, I joined the team, it was March 1st, 2016. So I'm just coming up on about 9 years. I was employee three, I believe, depending on whether or not you want to count the two co-founders. So I've seen a little bit of everything. We scaled the company to today we're over 100 employees. We actually went through a successful acquisition in August of 2021, acquired by a publicly traded top 15 size insurance brokerage. But we, Foundershield, we still have kind of our own internal team operating as that specialty placement arm within the greater organization. My focus has always been on the client facing side of the house. So understanding all of the different unique aspects of startup businesses, high growth, venture backed, private equity owned, however you want to classify them, and making sure that I'm able to intelligibly explain to old school insurance companies what they're doing, why they should still offer quotes, even though they may not be profitable yet, and navigate those risks and put these companies in a position where they can get the correct coverage, the most competitive costs, and a scalable solution as well. And I'll pause so you
Brilliant.
can keep asking more exciting stuff.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I mean, I am a small company founder and I have a unique insurance coverage around liability and being sued for what I say and do online. So that's
Sir,
kind of interesting. But, you know, when you think about founders and startups and insurance, there are a lot of misconceptions. There's not much education around this topic. What are some of the key things you'd like to communicate about founders and what insurance they may need or may not need?
understanding the business is, in my opinion, the most important thing. Everybody, when you talk to an entrepreneur, right? The entrepreneurial brain is such that they started a company because they feel that there is either a gap in the industry, there's a problem they can solve, and they have a unique way of doing it. If you're able to understand what that unique solution is, well, that's usually what's going to cause the quote unquote risk of the company. You know, the ability to articulate that to the insurance company is it allows you to say, hey, this isn't maybe it's new and groundbreaking from an operational standpoint, but from a risk standpoint, it's not too dissimilar to blank, whatever that may be. So understanding the operations and what the go forward plans are for any organization is important. It's also important that, and I mean, this is just my job, but it's important that these founders, these entrepreneurs, they have somebody like myself, like my team, who utilizes, they want to move fast, right? They're doing 100 different things as a single or single founder or partner founder.
Mm.
Insurance is usually towards the bottom of that list. We get that. But if you go to this kind of just like robo broking model, automation without an actual insurance professional to supplement it, that's where I've seen the most problems. So, like I said, having that ability to understand a business, having that ability to explain to these founders the different types of risks, whether it be operational, personnel, managerial. One of the first insurance products that are required of a lot of these startups, especially the venture-backed ones, is something called directors and officers insurance. That's insuring the individuals personally, should they be personally named in the suit. So there's a lot that goes into it. Having that relationship and understanding the actual business allows me to explain what the risks are and allows me to paint the picture of here's where I would prioritize your insurance portfolio. Here are the potential costs you're looking at. Here's how much you should buy based on what your peers are buying, so on and so forth.
Interesting. Well, let's cut to the chase. You know, in your experience, what are some of the key policies a high growth startup should consider, right away,
Our
and
our,
why?
our biggest sellers are directors and officers insurance, which I told you about. Again, super high level. It's protecting the individuals, that hence the name, the directors and officers, usually who are on the board. Should they be personally named in a suit? Think uh, misappropriation of funds, alleged misleading statements, wrongful competition, any of these managerial decisions or actions where they could be personally named. That's going to be your D&O insurance. Because we work with so many tech forward companies, almost all of them are also buying cyber insurance. You hear about like the headline news, the CrowdStrike outage impacts, all these Fortune 500 companies. You don't oftentimes hear about some of the middle market type breaches, and there's a lot of them. There's data breaches. We see claims arising out of ransomware, especially with the rise of cryptocurrency. A lot of these sophisticated hackers, they'll take control of these smaller businesses, websites, and operations, and they'll say, send me, whatever it is, 50 Bitcoin, a lot more difficult to trace by authorities. All of that stuff is contemplated under a cyber insurance policy. So again, just kind of humanizing the process. If you're starting a SaaS company, if you're starting a fintech company, anything in that tech ecosystem, you're almost always looking at D&O and cyber first and foremost.
Interesting. And do industries matter? You mentioned fintech, crypto,
Yeah,
healthcare. Is this pretty generic, or are there unique
no,
challenges in different industries?
it's a great question. And like I said, it's probably why the first thing I ask about is, tell me about your operations. What are you actually
Mm,
doing? Right? If you're running a podcast, you are actively talking and making representations that somebody could say, hey, that you stole my idea, right? It's more of like a media liability risk. But to give a more tangible example, we, by some stretch of luck, by some stretch of being in the right place at the right time, we actually started working with a lot of the early stage micromobility companies. Think those like
mm,
e-scooters you see out there on the streets. The risk for somebody offering shared e-scooter or e-bicycle rides is a lot different than that of an early client of ours in the fintech space like Robinhood. So because there's different risks, there's different policies, right? Somebody getting physically injured and pointing their finger at
mm,
Robinhood, just to give a name, or anyone, Coinbase, unlikely. Somebody pointing their finger at them for an allegation of financial loss, a little bit more of a realistic risk. On the flip side, you look at a Bird or a Lime, these e-scooter companies, the chance of somebody getting physically injured and saying, hey, it's because your brakes malfunction, your handlebars wouldn't turn. Yeah, that's a lot more of a realistic risk for a company like that, as opposed to, hey, listen, my bank account, was compromised. So because of the different risks, there's different types of insurance policies that are relevant. Just to drop the names, bodily injury type claims, you're looking at general liability insurance or product liability insurance. Financial loss risk, you're looking at cyber, you're looking at E&O, errors and omissions, sometimes D&O, depending on who's named in the suits. But different operations, different risks, different need for insurance policies, for sure.
yeah. Well said. Interesting challenge. And how comprehensive should coverage be? And I guess cost is a big issue for founders. I mean, we've obviously got our home insurance, life insurance, health insurance, car insurance, and now we've got to layer on some other coverage. I mean, do you work with micro enterprises or solo practitioners? Like I have a, liability coverage is pretty
Sure.
affordable, but how small and how big can you go with early
Uh,
stage teams?
we've stayed a few questions in there. I'll try to address all of them. We started the company over 10 years ago with the notion of early stage startups, early stage venture backed companies needed a more streamlined, seamless, and intuitive route to
Mm,
procure business insurance. We've stayed true to our roots. We continue to support the startup ecosystem, but part of our hypothesis was that as we onboard businesses at their early stage and understand their plans for growth and understand how and if they execute on those plans, we'll be best positioned to grow with those organizations. And that hypothesis proved true. We work with over, 5,000
Wow.
venture-backed startup type organizations, all 50 states, Canada, the UK, Israel, a bunch of other tech hubs overseas. So it's proven true. So that answers your question about, at what stage. And we've made strategic decisions to help support that growth, from hiring, from M&A activity, from tech stack build out, so on and so forth. But yes, we still believe if we can build trust and a relationship at the early stages of an organization, we'll be best positioned to grow with them. Maybe not every single one turns into, a Fortune 500 company, but some fade off, some grow and stabilize, some are the next unicorn or IPO out there. So that addresses the how early do you work with, how late do you work with. What else? How comprehensive is the coverage? Was the other part of that. Anyone who
Sure.
tells you like, well, price it doesn't matter, is just lying. Price always matters. It is part of every single conversation I have. It's just a matter of how much the actual coverage is discussed as well. A lot of times for very early stage companies, you're looking at more off the shelf policies, and it's truly just a cost play. As the business grows, the intricacies of the risk oftentimes develop and grow as well. That's where you can start getting a little bit more granular into what we're actually offering from a protection standpoint. And I'm not even just talking about buying more policies, more types of insurance. I'm talking about how kind of changes to business as a whole are impacting their day-to-day. So you think about stuff like the growth of AI, some of the cyber insurance carriers right now, they're offering, AI enhancement endorsements. You look at the ease by which, and you probably get this also on your cell phone, but the ease by which companies can blast out like text messages. A lot of cyber insurance companies were getting slapped with all of these TCPA claims. They said, "Oh, let me dial that back. Instead of offering $1 million, I'm going to say, yeah, I recognize this. I'm only going to offer, $10,000 in coverage." Kind of dark, but kind of like leaving somebody $1 in your will to say, "Hey, we know this is happening. We don't want any part of it." So as that happens, there becomes a need in the market, in the insurance market. Hey, this TCPA risk is a real thing. Now you can buy, your own TCPA insurance policy because you know that it may not be covered on your cyber policy. So the coverage is super important, but it really it becomes more part of the conversation, at least in my experience, as companies mature a bit and are starting to take their risk a little bit more seriously and look beyond just the bottom line price tag. Hopefully those
Yeah,
are good
really,
examples.
really
We've got a
interesting.
bunch
Yeah,
of
no,
those.
fascinating. And, I looked up a fact as you were talking. Insurance, the industry is a $1.7 trillion industry in the US, which is a mind-boggling number, but it's undergoing a lot of change, regulatory changes. Obviously, we're
Yeah.
seeing the fires and the floods and hurricanes sadly
Yeah.
happening. How do you stay on top of all that regulatory change? And
Yeah.
what are some of the trends that you're looking at or worried about in
I
this
read
year?
I read a lot of news articles about. No, I mean, listen, the insurance market is no different than any other market in the fact that it's cyclical, and there's different subsets of the market that go through different cycles. Right now, and I send my love to everybody out in LA, but right now, property insurance in high risk areas, whether that be forest fire hazard areas, coastal Florida, if you have any friends down in Florida, it is borderline impossible to
Hmm.
get property coverage, at least affordable property coverage. We're in a very hard market for high risk property right now. So much so that people are talking about, well, the government has to step in and provide a kind of stopgap solution here, because private insurers just aren't going to want to take on that risk for any cost based on their losses. On the flip side, we were in a very hard market for what I call kind of non-tangible risks. I go back to cyber in that sense. We were in a very hard market in cyber insurance world about a year and a half, 2 years ago. I had clients I had to explain that their price was going up 3x despite their business
Wow.
remaining relatively stable. But as the insurance companies insulate themselves with these higher premiums, their loss ratio, just real quickly, a loss ratio is the amount of money collected compared to the amount of claims paid out. Their loss ratio becomes more favorable. They have reinsurers that will give them more capacity. Say, hey, you wrote some good business, you're profitable, go write some more. Next thing you know, everyone's trying to write it, brings prices down because you can get a little bit more competitive. You get into a softer market, which right now we're in for a cyber on the cyber side of the house. But it's all cyclical. Something will happen, i.e., a CrowdStrike outage that I think they're putting estimated potential losses at 5.4 billion.
Wow.
That's not getting paid out overnight, but when it does, that might impact the cyber market. So each different subset, each different type of insurance kind of has a cyclical market into itself. As the market hardens, you get new entrants coming in to try and capture some market share. That's another thing that helps soften it a little bit as well. I think that will happen on the coastal Florida side of the house for property. I know there's a lot of work, people trying to gain capacity to write it, but they're also wary of the fact that, it's a hard market for a reason. There are hurricanes, there are floods, there are severe losses. So we'll see.
Yeah, a pretty dynamic space. So looking ahead for 2025, besides helping lots of startups and founders, what else are you excited about? What's on your radar for early this year?
So we've always been, we being Foundershield, we've always been at the forefront of utilizing technology within the insurance industry. I think we were the first insure tech in the commercial insurance side of the house. There's a couple others that kind of, we've competed with over the years and we know them well. But we've always believed that, you got to stay ahead of the curve when it comes to utilizing technology. Again, I told you earlier on, I am not of the belief that tech can replace the need for an insurance broker, especially as you work with later stage companies. But I am of the belief that technology can be used to streamline the insurance process. So what we've been focusing on a lot, you asked about, really early stage companies like single founder, partner founder led organizations where you probably have under 10 employees still. We've built an online platform, a digital questionnaire that essentially turns these archaic insurance apps into yes or no, fill in the blank type questions that, a founder or a head of legal or head of finance, head of operations, whatever their role may be, can answer without being an insurance professional. What we do with that, with one click of a button, we're able to transcribe all of those questions onto the insurance company specific application. So those underwriters, the old school insurance underwriters, they're looking at their application just like any old school broker would get it. What we've been focusing on this year to continue to stay ahead of the curve is building out more APIs, so direct connectivity with the insurance company. So instead of having to even click a button to transcribe all of the information we're collecting onto the apps, the underwriters are getting it straight from our website, essentially. And based on their underwriting guidelines, because underwriting it's a lot of check boxes. Oh, they have multi-factor authentication in place. Check. They have EDR. Check. I'll quote it, right? We're able to turn around some quotes within 5 minutes. It's very powerful for smaller business. But again, as you onboard more small business and you build more relationships, our hypothesis continues to be that we can grow with them and we can continue to build carrier relationships and support the entirety of our portfolio. So I would say, to answer your question, a more direct answer and shorter answer, carrier connectivity.
Fascinating. Yeah, that sounds like a giant leap forward. Anyone who's dealt with legacy insurance companies and brokers, as most of us has, feels the pain
Sure.
there. So congratulations on that and on helping so many founders and startups. Great
Thank
job.
you.
Thanks for joining and sharing a bit of the vision.
My pleasure. My
And
pleasure.
thanks, Jonathan. Thanks everyone for listening and watching and sharing. Take care.
If anyone has a question for you, that's for me. Tell them to give me a shout. I would love to chat with them. All right.
I'm sure you can help. All right.
All
Thanks so
right,
much,
Evan. Take
Jonathan.
care.
Take care.